Now, we have two guests who've joined us in the studio. Mike Kipkorir Bill is the founder and CEO of Verb Education, and Martha Mbuvi is the coordinator of AACOSE. Achekwe. No, it's not that. It is AACOSE, and she'll tell us what this is all about. She's the coordinator of the organizing committee for the AACOSE 2021 to 2024. Martha, Mike, good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Welcome to the hot seat of Kenya's biggest conversation.
Thank you.
What is AACOSE?
AACOSE is Africa annual Africa Conference on Social Entrepreneurship. Yeah.
African Annual Conference on Social Entrepreneurship. And that's why we're here to discuss the entrepreneurship ecosystem in Africa and building a network to accelerate the social entrepreneurship in Africa. Karibuni sana. You'll tell us, Mike, about Verb Education, but first, let us hear the day's proverb. City, welcome our guests with the day's proverb.
Yes, our proverbs for the whole of this week come from the Republic of Malawi. Okay, since these guests of ours understand many things that other people don't understand.
In fact, they're organizing an African conference.
They're organizing very many things. So Malawi is part of these many things as it's in the continent.
Yes.
Let me ask you, do you have any idea what the name of the president of this country is? Any of you can respond.
Somewhere Raputo.
Not this one.
No, you're right.
Okay.
No, you're right.
When you asked the question, he answered correctly.
The president of Kenya is called Dr.
Yeah.
William. Okay? That one we've gotten. President of Malawi.
No idea right now.
Hint, he's also doctor.
Yes, he's also Doctor.
His first name is one who was risen from the dead after 4 days.
For those of you who read the Bible.
Oh, sorry. Yes.
And don't say Jesus, because Jesus did it in 3 days.
Yeah.
All right, his name is...
Master, if you were here,
my brother.
Would not have
Have
died.
died.
Sunday school.
Lazarus.
Yes.
Mike ni mtu wa kanisa.
No. Unajua zile kanisa watu wanadaga Monday.
Mike got it. Lazarus.
Lazarus.
It's called Lazarus Chakwera. Okay. Yes, Chakwera. Yes. Malawi is an interesting country, a lovely country. You must visit sometime. I'm saying this because I haven't visited it, and I hope to visit it sometime. It is only when the flood is gone that you can claim to be lucky.
It is only when the flood is gone that you can claim to be lucky.
Yes.
Mike, because you got the name right, you get dibs on this.
Chance, yeah. I think it's you will then discover what it has brought or what it has taken. So, the flood can bring something or it can take something.
Wow.
So I think it depends.
Martha?
Yeah.
Interestingly, Martha was Lazarus' brother. Anyway.
Yes. Sister to Lazarus, yeah.
Yes.
I think I agree with Mike. It's what the flood can bring forth, good things and also bad things. So it is what it takes from you and also what it brings.
Okay.
And most of the times we look at floods negatively, like what we had, the physical floods.
Yeah.
But then, because we are referring to the Bible, we talk of floodgates of heaven. That's a positive thing. Thank you.
All right.
You have redeemed yourself, my friend.
Yes, sir.
Well done.
Kanisa Monday and
Friday. All right. So, Mike, what is Verb Education?
Yep. So verb, V-E-R-B, noun, verb, adjective. So that verb, the doing word. So we are very much focused on educators, those who deliver education. And our premise is simple. We start from a very simple premise. Let me use myself as an example. I want to take my children to the nearest school and not necessarily the most expensive one. So what does this mean? It means I would like the nearest school to be the best school possible for my kids. Yeah. And I want this for everyone else. Yeah. How do we achieve this ideal of the nearest school being the best school? It's by doing things to improve all the schools. And we improve schools in so many ways. Some people build classrooms, some people pay school fees, all those things. Some people pay teachers. I saw some striking. Okay.
Yep.
So we have chosen to focus on the teachers and the school administrators, especially around reducing workload and then making it very easy for them to use the data that they've generated out of using now the systems we provide to really gain insights. So let me give you an example. We have an app called CBC app. So CBC app. And what this app does, it's used by teachers and school administrators to really simplify processes of assessment and assessment record keeping, which under CBC is significantly more strenuous than the previous system that we had. So when teachers use it, it really reduces their work from hours to minutes. So higher quality of life. Teachers have weekends and very basic things like those. Then from there, we gain a lot of insights into how learning is happening. You see, like this year, we will not have a mean score at the end, a KCP mean score. You will not be seeing school buses with leaves, and people celebrating and all that stuff, because that benchmark is no longer there. So how do schools gauge themselves? So we, for example, are now able to give schools, through the data they keep, the ability to compare the classroom assessments, the assessments that happen every day, versus what happens at the end of the term. And those differences can really enable school administrators to figure out which teacher needs help and how can we do this. So we're having an impact mainly in the space of just productivity for the teachers, as well as now the kind of data and insights that they gain from it. So that's what we do mainly.
You do this for profit?
Yes, we are a company that does it for profit. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So your client is the school.
Correct.
It's not this. It's not the student.
No, our client is the school.
It's the school.
Yes.
So is this an example of a social enterprise?
Yes, it is.
So how?
So we are trying to solve a very big problem in the education sector, which really affects all our schools, public and private. And among the private schools, I really want us to think of the low-cost private schools as a very important component. Actually, they're the majority of the private schools. And they serve a purpose which even public schools do serve in many parts of our country. So this is an example of a social enterprise because we are really targeting a problem affecting the majority, and the service is offered at a price point that is accessible to the majority, and we are seeing it make a difference in the simplest school with school fees of 7,500 per term, all the way to the most expensive kind of schools. So we and it's also built specifically for our teachers. You see the way our teachers are prepared in college, and the kind of practice they have every day, and the kind of circumstances they have to deal with. It delivers the national curriculum and all those things. So it's very much tailored for the majority.
For the majority.
Yeah.
Then Martha, if we go with that, anybody who's running a business can claim to be a social enterprise. They're looking at the mass market, so they're dealing with the majority. It's benefiting everybody. So can it be called a social enterprise? How would we properly define a social enterprise?
A social enterprise is one that has impact in our community. Like, look at what Mike is doing. Quality, in terms of how do the teachers in CBC, how do they enhance their, even their reference materials, how do they enhance the quality of the documents they use in the classroom. So it has to have an impact. So not everything is a social enterprise. It has to have an impact in the community, either in terms of environmental sustainability or just influencing the community in a positive way. In fact, we say that social enterprises are those that have a positive change in our community. So it's not about the profits that they make, because profits are there to sustain the business. But after that, what impact does that enterprise have in the community? Are we involved in... and let me say something. It's not CSR. This is very different from CSR. It's the positive change that we can have from the business model. So the main objective of the business from the onset, by default, is how you can impact the community. So it can be in terms of poverty eradication, what we call the 3-0 concepts, where we have zero carbon emission, zero unemployment, and also we are talking about youth empowerment, mitigating inequalities in the community, and just empowering the people. So it must have an impact which we can actually measure. We can measure.
Okay.
How many people have gained employment from the business model?
Okay.
So those are some of the matrices that we use to measure so what social enterprises are.
Okay, spanning the works. Nowadays, it's a common thing now that every company is required to have this ESG and even report on ESG. That's environment, social, and governance. Social aspect. Look at what's the impact of this business in the community. How much is it benefiting the community? How many people is it employing? The diversity, inclusion. Is it considering all those things? Then are we saying that we're pushing more and more businesses to become social enterprises?
Yeah, in a way, because we are a value-based society, and social entrepreneurship has a lot of value. We emphasize on values, because if I just start a business to make money, make a profit, and I'm not so bothered about my neighbor, then that's not social entrepreneurship. Because in Africa, and especially in Africa, we have the concept of Utu in East Africa, and in Africa we talk of Ubuntu. So what is Ubuntu? What is Utu? I am because you are, or we are because I am. So there's that nexus between how much am I influencing the people around me. So I think because as a community, we are geared towards a value-based system, even our education system, which is CBC. If you look at it, we have the core values. And that's what we are telling our children from the onset, from when they are in PP1 and PP2, that it's a value-based education. So now, because of that, if we go by what you're saying, then we are a community that's geared towards social entrepreneurship.
Let me ask this question. If I'm to go by your definition, a company like Microsoft, would you call it a social enterprise? Because its impact on societies are profound.
Okay.
Yeah, I can answer that. You see, the social enterprise tag, I'm keen to call it a tag. The social enterprise tag is used by some companies for some purposes, and it helps them advance some
their business,
some either awareness or an agenda and things like those. But the whole concept of social enterprises, there are those social enterprises which, at the end of the day, they want to make money and everything, but at the end of the day, they're not targeting the profit. They also want to equally spend. Like there's no dividends later on. Okay. So that will be shared out a lot. So they have a big focus on that. So many social enterprises go in that direction. Many other companies, such as Microsoft now, which actually do things, huge things, like the kind of technology we now have access to and everything, actually do consider a lot of those practices and a lot of those things to be social enterprises. But those companies which choose that tag perhaps really informs the kind of decisions they make and how they choose to expand and even how they're structured. So say, for example, a company like Microsoft has to report earnings, and its shareholders want to see, rise in share value. They want to collect dividends at the end of the year. A company such as ours, I think we are more interested in how many more have we reached this year. So, we would be plowing back a lot more.
So the shareholder is not really looking at how much they're getting out of this. It's not extractive. It's more of, if you're going to give me something, even if you declare dividend, if you declare 5% from the earnings, it's good. Plow the other 95 back into.
And I think that's the whole point.
Okay.
I think that's the whole point behind that.
Okay.
Yeah.
So then we talk about, how you're able to measure, right? Because that would be the difference here. And not just measuring in terms of how much you have in terms of numbers, but then really what it has done. So what are the markers that we use to say that this impact then has made a difference? And what is the difference that we're looking at? Has this person then been able to go from being within this community and then gone out and done 1, 2, 3? Or are we saying that the measure that we use here is if this person went through this training, for example, and then has now been able to get a job as a result of it? Is that what we're looking at? Or what kind of impact are we saying now is a measurable marker?
So you see, that it depends on the sector, the company, and the various things that I being aimed at. So like in our case, for example, which we are in the education sector and we are targeting the teachers specifically and the school administrators. So the things that we're measuring for us, for example, is the productivity of the workforce within the school. You find schools maybe employing maybe a few more people than they need, just to follow up on a particular aspect that they have to follow up on. A company in the agricultural sector, for example, maybe is targeting a certain price point for a food product. A company in healthcare is maybe targeting availability of a certain kind of thing to the people around. So I think it really, sector by sector, it's going to vary what.
So let's focus or concentrate on schools.
Yeah.
Because obviously that's where the thrust is here. What would we look at in a school setting where this has been introduced? What would we see? And it would be very clear that school X went through this, school Y did not. What would we see amongst teachers, for example, or the output that would help us to understand, this is the impact that this has actually had on these individuals or the community of the school?
So now, this is now depending on the behavior of a social enterprise. So I'll give you an example. So let's say we want to improve teachers. Typically, when we improve teachers, it's through events, a training event. And we organize one training event or two training events, and we limit it there, because we want to remain with a profit and we want to remain with a substantial chunk, as opposed to this person actually needs hand-holding all year round, and it's going to take much longer than what we can envision and design into a training. So a social enterprise kind of thinking tries to figure out, how do we make sure we have this teacher every day and hold their hands all through the year, to the point that they actually get to where we want them to go, as opposed to us saying we ran a training event, take pictures, and we're happy about it, but deep down we know we've actually not changed this kind of a person. So that to me is a very clear example about just the thinking and the approach to it. So if you're thinking really in terms of the impact, like, is this person actually improved? Is this person actually effective? Then that's an example in amongst teachers that I would say. So it's in how the kind of programs are structured and the kind of decisions that go into creating a program like that.
Would the student or the learner come into play here? Because oftentimes the measure of a good teacher is what you see a student has been able to achieve or how they've been able to improve. So is that taken into consideration?
Very much, and by default, because the student leaves the school.
Yes.
The teacher remains.
Yes.
This teacher is there to benefit successive generations of students as they come. Even if they're transferred elsewhere, they're still benefiting successive generations. The student ni mpita njia, they're there today, tomorrow they go. So if you empower a teacher and really make sure that a teacher is extremely well, this person is there all through, and they can keep impacting successive generations of students. So that's how it takes students into account.
Okay.
Much,
Mike Kipkorir Bill is the founder and CEO of Verb Education, while Martha Mbuvi is the coordinator for AACOSE, the organizing committee for this particular conference that's coming up this year. Say again, what's AACOSE in full? The
Annual
Africa Conference on Social Entrepreneurship. It's a Pan-African summit.
Okay.
Yeah.
Mike Kipkorir Bill, founder and CEO of Verb Education, and Martha Mbuvi, the coordinator for the organizing committee for the annual African Conference on Social Entrepreneurship. So, Martha, this conference, what edition is it?
AACOSE 7th edition. Yeah.
7th edition. Okay. When is it going to be, and why is it important?
It's going to be on 15th to 17th. That's starting today. So this is day one.
Okay.
In the next probably 1 hour, the sessions will start. And it's important because we are having a conversation about redirecting the narrative or redefining the narrative of Africa. Africa has been said to be, we just have we have this kind of descriptions that it's kind of poor, it's disadvantaged. But with AACOSE, we are saying we can have impact even in Africa. When you look at this Pan-African Summit, we are talking about over 50 countries involved. We are talking of delegates that are coming from all over Africa. And in Kenya in particular, we have over 85,000 social enterprises. Yeah. So when you talk about the impact that we have, then we are saying we can have these conversations. We are bringing in all the stakeholders together to just have a conversation on social entrepreneurship. Yeah.
These over 85,000 are what, registered as social enterprises?
Yes, registered social enterprises, because we're also looking at the SMEs.
Okay.
Yeah, the middle level ones, the high level, all that together, put together, we have over 85,000.
So all these organizations, individuals and companies from all the 50 countries who are coming to Kenya for these 2 days, what are they going to be doing? Is it exhibitions? Is it discussions? Is it lobbying? Were we expecting a street march? A festival? What?
Yeah, we are going to have panel conversations. We're also going to have keynote speakers. We have the ambassador of Hungary as one of our chief guests, and the Honorable His Excellency Olelenko of Kajiado, the governor of Kajiado. Then we are going to have our master classes. We'll have breakout rooms to address a number of thematic areas. And just to mention a few, we have legal policy frameworks on social entrepreneurship. We have healthcare. We are going to address mental health. We have issues about human capital. We have issues of diversity and inclusion. And all these will be conversations around social entrepreneurship. And so we'll also have exhibitors. We have exhibitors on the ground already. And we are going to have a youth festival on Friday. So we are going to have a conversation with the youth about social entrepreneurship. Yeah, and also the academia is coming on board also on Friday. We were going to have the academia in one room discussing methodologies and research, perspectives on social entrepreneurship, because we are saying it's now the high time we document this. Social entrepreneurship, by the way, has been in existence for a very long time. I'm tempted to introduce something here which I'm not so I really have to be careful, but there's something called African entrepreneurship. I don't know if they remember the days of something like Karaoke and Sons. That's African entrepreneurship.
Yes.
Leaving a legacy. You start a business, but your aim is not just you. It goes down into other generations.
Yep.
So, but at this point, we're not talking about African entrepreneurship, but it's part of social entrepreneurship, because we are looking at the impact on community, global impact. We have the non-profit making organizations, and then we also have the transformative organizations. So all that put together, social entrepreneurship.
The power of example cannot be overestimated. See, when you talk about African enterprise, and you talk about social enterprise in an African setting, any enterprise within this continent has a social component, a huge one. There's always a black tax attached to it, whether you like it or not. So it may be clearly for profit, but believe me, the social element will always be there. There'll be a harambe, there'll be a need for someone to help someone who's in a hospital. There'll be a need to ensure that somebody has gone to school or somebody wants to study abroad. Or it's a constant. So even when we talk about social enterprise and we talk about entrepreneurship in an African context, may not necessarily be the same discussion that you're having with people in the West.
Yeah,
because
true.
For them, many of the things that we find ourselves involved in, they have governments that take care of some of these social needs. For us, the social needs are taken care of predominantly by individuals, peoples, families. Now, beyond the conversations that we're going to have, I personally like talking, so the idea of conversations make me very happy. Then what? All these people come together, you have all these discussions, you document all these things, then what?
Yeah, then we have impact in our community, because we are bringing in the actors in social entrepreneurship. So we are bringing in the public sector, the private sector, change makers, and then we have these conversations. And then because we've also had very successful success stories out of AACOSE, a good example would be Solberg, which is a baby of AACOSE, Mshamba, which is a digital platform for the agricultural sector. We have Mike here of Verb Education. We have E for Impact. So we always have those success stories out of all these conversations, because remember, we're not just talking about social enterprises. We're also looking at social innovations. What are some of these social innovations in our community that have really impacted the community? So it's not just about the enterprises. It goes beyond, I like saying it goes beyond what we know as our traditional business. It's not the dukkha. It's not the dukkha. Like if I have somebody doing garbage collection, they have offered employment, but they are also impacting on the environment. So it goes beyond just the conversations. We've had very good success stories out of AACOSE.
But the conversations are necessary.
Yeah.
Oh no, they're absolutely necessary. The reason why I asked the question is this. This country seems to have become a conference hub for the planet. No week passes by without some international conference taking place. Conferences are good. It gives an opportunity for people to hear and understand things that are happening elsewhere, and to also pick up, make connections. It is good. But when there are too many conversations, I am not sure that the requisite action that is required actually takes place, because people just get stuck on one conversation, leading yet to another conversation to verify what it is that was discussed, and then you now quantify what was verified, and before you know it, the year has ended and you want to have another conference to now determine how it is that all these conversations impacted. So I am simply saying this because the conversations can be an end in itself.
Yeah.
In your case, you've clearly given an example that it is not. But many conferences are just that. We are at the African Climate Change Conference. Tell me what exactly has happened since that conference took place that you can point to. Here, we know we are supposed to plant 1 trillion trees. We know that. Sorry. What was it? 15 billion. Okay, 15 billion. Not quite a trillion. But we're supposed to
eventually 1 trillion.
Yes, now. Every so often we plant trees. It has been mentioned. So one could say we see it happening, all right? And then?
I could contribute. For me, this, for example, will be the 4th edition that I'll be attending. So I've attended another 3 before. This will be the 4th. And I can tell you the beauty of having a place where many people come to talk. The first thing is the networking value that you get out of there. There's so much networking value. You get to meet other enterprises doing something similar, something completely dissimilar, but then you do find very unique avenues for collaborating together and creating opportunities. What has clearly been born out of the successive AACOSE conferences are other organizations around the continent. For example, in DRC, led by one of the partners called Agromwinda in DRC, who attended AACOSE several years back, saw the kind of discussions happening. They've mirrored something similar there, and what Agromwinda has been able to do in terms of organizing enterprises within Congo and to get them to have impact within that space there has been good, to the point that they too have also ended up hosting their own conferences there. But those conferences don't come from nothing. They come from a community of practice, a community of people who are actually doing things together over time. Yeah.
That's the question that was actually at the heart of my questioning.
Yep.
Do we cascade these conferences so that what we have at a national level is then cascaded to a micro level, where looking at the diversity of things that come out of the conference, let's say from County X, whether that conversation is then taken to that county so that that county can disseminate that conversation, so that the very things you're talking about is understood at the so-called Mwananchi level. Yes.
Okay, let me respond to that. We have iTalk, which is a post-AACOSE event. We are able now to go to Mashinani, if I can say that. It's a webinar. We normally do a webinar on that. And then and because of that, then we are able now to follow up, like you're saying, to go to cascade this beyond now the national level. So we are able to do our iTalks. And the iTalks is where now we involve what I would say the common Mwananchi. Yeah. Later on now, it's a post-AACOSE event.
So obviously, this is the 7th one.
Yeah, this is the 7th one.
And so, I mean, we've talked about this in pockets, but then there is enough to say that's necessary for us to do another one until, I mean, it's called annual for a reason. So what are some of those pointers that say, you know what, we can't stop, we must do another one so that we can bring heads together for conference? So what are those that would say, okay, we need to do another one? Why?
I would say the reason we keep doing another one and another one is because of consistency and continuity. That is one. 2, every year we introduce new themes. Like this year, we've introduced a thematic area called Refugee Socioeconomic Integration. Last year, we introduced faith-based entrepreneurship. So we keep growing. And because of that, because remember, this is a conversation between actors, collaborators. We have very great partners like the Get Through the Hospital is one of our partners. Growinda, we have CISP, we have, we have quite a number that are on board with us. Gold Youth. And so every year we get to have conversations around what else do we want to introduce in the conference to make it a bit different. Like now this year, we have 2 new components. Academia, conversations, where we're going to be, like conference style. And then we also have the Youth Festival. Okay, and those are new components of AACOSE. So every year we are growing, every year we are getting more innovative, we are getting more creative, and so it creates a need for another AACOSE. And I believe the next one now will not even just be bigger and better. This one of AACOSE 7, we are saying bigger and better. Next year, I think we'll use excellence, bigger, better. I don't know what else we'll say. But because we are growing. Remember, AACOSE is a platform to network, to grow, to gain knowledge, to get creative, in those conversations.
So something you mentioned earlier when you talk, and you thought it might be controversial, but I don't really think so. When you talk about African entrepreneurship and talking about passing down from generation to the next, about best practices, because they work, isn't it?
Yeah.
And there's a reason why some people continue to go in that direction. So, is it a forum whereby some of these things that maybe previously had been shunned upon and said, no, there is another model for business in Africa that we should follow. There is another model for entrepreneurship that we should follow. Meanwhile, those that were inherently ours, there's nothing wrong with them.
Yeah.
They worked very well, and there were some people who were extremely wealthy that were able to pass down the tenets of business from father to son. And father to daughter in nowadays, So will some of those be discussed? Because it seems as though we have somehow shunned some of our practices and welcomed the practices of the West, thinking that ours do not work. But they do. So is there room for some of these conversations to take place?
Actually, I would say that probably one of our thematic areas next year is going to be African entrepreneurship. Preempting next year. Because we need to look at that practice. It's a good practice, whereby we are able to, the next generation is able to pick from their fathers. But there's something that needs to get into this conversation. So where does the girl child also come in? When you talk of only karaoke and sons. So that's an issue to explore next year.
So should it be karaoke, daughters and sons?
Yeah,
karaoke and family. Because if you look at the Western models, if you look at the Western models, what happens? A daughter can also inherit a business. But in Africa, we are still very far from that.
In this country, not that far.
Not so far.
Not so far, but still far.
True.
If you do a bit of research, you'll see we are still a bit far.
True.
We have those that are empowered and that are sensitized enough to know that you can also have your sons and daughters inherit a business. But I want to take us back to the inheritance battles we've seen in this country. Our billionaires.
Why I say we are not quite there is because we have a constitution that supports that very notion.
And law and legal practice.
Yes.
That also has done the same.
Yes.
Decisions from the court which are setting the precedent on this.
So tradition may interfere with it because what you're talking about is tradition and practice.
Yeah.
It does not favor the girl child being given that particular opportunity. But again, so long as it's anchored within a certain framework, then you have actually taken a very positive step. Yes.
Yeah.
Let me ask the question on advocacy. Does the conference have an element of advocacy, of coming together, identifying issues that are of common interest that then would require a harmonized voice to push and advocate?
Yeah, and I think that's why we have a session on policy formulation, because it is out of policies that we can actually now move to the next level and have a voice concerning some of these matters. So there's a whole thematic area on that.
How does the government recognize social enterprise, if at all?
Yeah, they do with the involvement with the small, what we call small medium enterprises. We have MCA, which is a member of which is actually one of our partners. And we are trying to bring on board conversations with the public sector on social entrepreneurship, and especially our interest, a lot of interest has been felt on the new scheme, the credit guaranteeing scheme, which we believe will be able to finance the SMEs.
But but there's nothing that is set aside that specifically recognizes a business as a social enterprise. Is there a need for that? Is there a need for, at point of registration or at some point, a business being categorized as a social enterprise, so that then it can enjoy some of those benefits? So you can say that because you're a social enterprise, if you apply for the credit guarantee scheme, you qualify. If you apply for this kind of business with government, you qualify. Is there a need for such, Mike?
Not necessarily, honestly. What is needed, and for me, actually, the whole concept of a social enterprise is the resonance. A conference like AACOSE, we resonate that there's a place where there are many people who think about not the share price at the end of the day.
Yeah.
So I do not necessarily. I think there should be an enabling environment for this kind of thing. I even think in one of the sessions, Honorable Ndidi Nyoro will be coming, and there'll be that component of advocacy where people will be, discussing at that point. I don't think there's a need to, by definition, like when you're registering your company, you register yourself as an NGO, a social enterprise, or a limited company. I don't necessarily think that distinction is there, but I think there should be an enabling environment for people who want to act as social enterprises to actually have the space and
part of that enabling environment could be incentives. Now, how would you get incentives if you are not categorized?
So once again, it depends on how you look at it.
Okay.
The current tax regime is incentive enough.
Really?
For example, I know, no one wants to do that.
Say that again.
But I'm interested. I want to hear. Yes. What's your perspective?
You see, you pay a certain amount of income tax based on your profits.
Yep.
Okay? And you can decide that does KRA take this for it to have an impact by itself, or do we plow back and expand our scope and expand what we do? So of course I don't mean that it is encouraging us in that sense, but I mean the current constraints we have within our tax environment and everything actually do make you feel that, what, I think let's reinvest, let's do this at the end of the day. So it can make sense to have incentives for social enterprises. I fully agree on that. But then it would be difficult, of course, to where do we draw the line on who exactly is a social enterprise? You give the example of Microsoft. In their actions and in what they're doing, it's amazing impact, but you know about what they are pursuing at the end of the day, which is the shareholder value and all that. So it's a very fluid situation, which I think our current constraints, under our current constraints, you can still act very much as a social enterprise.
Where do the youth fit into this conversation? Because you have a youth festival.
Yeah, that's where the youth fits in. We are going to have a youth festival and have conversations. There's going to be a gallery, an art gallery on some of these social innovations, and then there will be conversations around how the youth can get involved in social entrepreneurship, because it's been a challenge in the past trying to explain to them what it's all about.
Why?
First of all, they don't understand even who are entrepreneurs. Most of them are like, show us the entrepreneurs in Kenya. Now we're also talking about social entrepreneurship, so that's a big elephant in the room. Okay, and that's why we are having a conversation on the third day.
How do you marry them with the with academia? The academics, you say, who are going to be part and parcel of it?
Yeah, we'll have two sessions. On the third day, we'll have the academia on their own and the youth festival on its own.
What are the academics discussing? Beyond theory.
Yeah, theories are important. In any conversation, theories are important.
That's why I said beyond
the
theory.
The tenets of those theories and how practical we can get. Because remember, the one of the things about social entrepreneurship is born out of
an idea.
Yes. And not just an idea, even a philosophy in Tangaza University of social transformation. Yeah, that's why we have social entrepreneurship, because we're looking at the transformative models that are of impact in our community. Yeah, so it's not just about the conversations. We're also looking at how else can we impact our community.
And I think also the academia, and why I find them very important, is they're a very good source of generating evidence and in generating credibility around some of the practices.
Only if they're involved in research.
Exactly.
Yeah.
If they're not,
yeah.
they'll be regurgitating things that are probably out of date. Yes.
Like now, the papers we are going to have, these are papers that people have already started even carrying out data collection. So we are not talking about, it's not just theory, we are involved in research. So the academia will be developing documents based on that.
Yeah.
And we believe we are going to publish a journal out of that.
Conversations are good.
Good.
They are very good.
Yeah.
And they must be encouraged.
They need to start, they need to be maintained.
Yes, that's the whole point.
Okay.
Yes.
So today until Friday, venue?
Our venue is at Tangaza University. We've already started. I think they are on board right now. The keynote speakers this morning, and then the panel sessions, and then we also have showcasing. And we forgot to mention that. We are going to showcase success stories out of AACOSE. The previous AACOSEs, remember they are seventh, the seventh. Yeah, so we have showcasing in every panel session.
So everything else that has happened will now be seeing it as well.
Yes, we'll now be seeing.
Well, all the best with that. And let's see, we can have a conversation after this the conference itself. Come and tell us, so this is what came out of that conference. These are the kind of conversations. These are the action points and what we expect to see going forward into the next one. Mike Kipkorir Bill is the founder and CEO of Verb Education, and Martha Mbuvi is the coordinator of the organizing committee of the annual African Conference on Social Entrepreneurship. It's taking place in Nairobi at Tangaza University today into Friday, and they'll be discussing very many issues and aspects of social enterprise in the continent.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.